Hello, my name is Sharva Hampton Campbell, and I'm a third year doctoral student in the College of Education's Interdisciplinary Leadership Program. I am reading today The Adventures of Sunday School, Pete, Jonah, and the Whale. This children's book was written by me, and I hope you enjoy it.
Pete, hurry up. You're going to make us late for Sunday school, yelled Pawpaw Jack. Yes, sir, replied Pete as he began to mimic his grandfather, repeating what he said almost word for word. Sunday school is the most important time to be at church. It's where you learn about Jesus. How can you grow and mature in the Lord if you don't go to Sunday school? Asked Pawpaw Jack. Pete hunched his shoulders as if he was answering his grandfather's question. After mimicking and mocking his grandfather, Pete brushed his wavy coal black hair and put his brush back in the cabinet. This was something his grandfather taught him to do. Pete recalled Pawpaw Jack telling him always to put things back in their proper place after use so that when you need it again, you can find it. Pete didn't fully understand the meaning of this, but he obeyed his grandfather. Then Pete scurried around his bedroom looking for his black loafers. He found one of them in his closet, and he couldn't find the other one. Pete, I'm getting tired of waiting for you, yelled Pawpaw Jack. Pete scanned the room, but he could not see his loafer laying anywhere. Finally, he looked under the bed, and there it was. While reaching under the bed to get his shoe, he recalled Pawpaw Jack saying, "If you always put things back in their proper place after use, it will be there when you need it again." Pete, if I have to call you one more time, I'm getting my switch. Let's go, hurled Pawpaw Jack. Pete jumped. He was startled by the sternness in his grandfather's voice. Okay, Pawpaw, here I come. Pete grabbed his Bible and ran to the front door where his grandfather was standing. Pawpaw Jack's hands were folded and he had a snarly look on his face. Child, you gotta learn to put some pep in your step. We're going to learn more about Jesus today, and I don't want to be late, Pawpaw Jack said as he smiled at Pete. No, Pete said, the lesson today is not about Jesus. It's about Jonah and the whale. That's my boy, said Grandpa. You studied your lesson for today. Yes, sir, replied Pete as he buckled his seat belt in his grandfather's 1975 powder blue Buick LeSabre. Pawpaw Jack looked at Pete through the rearview mirror and winked his eye, saying, Yes, that's my boy. As Pete settled in for the 30-minute ride to Morning Star Tabernacle Church, he began to envision Jonah in the belly of the whale. It was as if Pete was inside the whale with Jonah. They were sliding up and down on the whale's tongue and swimming in its belly. Every time the whale moved in the water, they would yell, "Whee!" as if they were riding a wave. Pete? Pete! Pete! Are you listening to me? Yelled Pawpaw Jack. Are you okay back there? And who is Jay? Aw, Grandpa, replied Pete as he drifted back to his adventure with Jonah. Pete didn't realize that every time Pawpaw Jack hit a bump in the road, it would cause them to bounce up and down in their seats. Instead, he thought the whale was doing tricks in the water. Pete and Jonah continued sliding up and down the tongue of the whale and into its belly for what seemed like hours. Pawpaw Jack pulled into his regular parking space at Morning Star Tabernacle Church, which was right next to Deacon Johnny's shiny red Cadillac. Pete knew they had arrived at church because he began to hear familiar voices speaking to his grandfather. Miss Bessie's raspy voice rang in the air as she greeted Pawpaw Jack. Good morning, Brother Jack. God has a word for us today, proclaimed Miss Betsy. Hello there, Brother Jack, yelled Brother Thomas. He always talked very loud because he never wore his hearing aid. Top of the morning to you, Brother Jack, sang Mr. John, the choir director. Pawpaw Jack greeted each of them with a smile, a nod, and a wave. When Pete saw his best friend John standing in the foyer of the church, he darted past his grandfather to greet his friend. What's up, John? Yelled Pete. Nothing much, replied John as he initiated their secret handshake. After that, they started running down the hall to their Sunday school classroom. They were about halfway down the hall when Pete heard his grandfather's voice. "Pete, I know you're not running in the church. You know better. Have you no manners and respect for God's house?" yelled Pawpaw Jack. Pete and John turned towards Pawpaw Jack, and in unison they replied, "Yes, sir." From that point on, they walked very cautiously the remainder of the way to their Sunday school classroom. Upon entering the classroom, they spoke to the rest of the class and sat in their assigned seats, which were adjacent to each other. "Good morning, class," said Miss Loretta. "Get your Sunday school books and Bibles out. Our lesson for today is about Jonah and the whale. Can anyone tell me who Jonah was and how he ended up in the belly of the whale?" Pete raised his hand and Miss Loretta gave him permission to speak. Pete began to tell everyone about Jonah and his journey to deliver a message from God to the people of Nineveh. Pete shared that Jonah was a prophet, someone who God used to speak to the people. He told them about how God gave Jonah the assignment of going to tell the people of Nineveh that he was not pleased with their wicked behavior. John chimed in and said Jonah was disobedient to God. Miss Loretta asked John to explain. "Okay," said John. Jonah didn't like the people of Nineveh because they were considered enemies of Jonah's people, the Israelites. Jonah wanted the people of Nineveh to die for their sins. He didn't want them to turn back to God, but God was giving them a second chance. God gave Jonah a message to give to the people of Nineveh, but he didn't want to deliver the message. He tried several times to avoid delivering the message. He tried to escape from delivering the message by hiding out on a ship, but that didn't work because the ship experienced turmoil at sea due to a great storm. The sailors soon found out that it was Jonah who brought trouble upon them. Jonah admitted that he was running away from an assignment given to him by God. Pete added, "It's like when your parents tell you to do something and you don't do what you're told to do and you get a spanking. God spanked Jonah because he was disobedient." Miss Loretta asked Pete, "How did God spank Jonah?" Pete explained, "God allowed Jonah to be swallowed up by the whale, and the whale allowed Jonah to slide up and down his tongue," Pete said with excitement. "Really?" said Miss Loretta with a puzzled look on her face. Pete began to tell Miss Loretta and the class how he had rode on the whale's tongue and swam in its belly with Jonah. When John heard this, he stopped Pete in mid-sentence and said, Don't pay any attention to Pete. He was just kidding. John grabbed Pete by the arm and pulled him out of the classroom as the other students began laughing hysterically. All of the other students began laughing hysterically. "Are you out of your mind?" yelled John. "No," said Pete. "On our way to church this morning, I spent time with Jonah in the belly of the whale. We were sliding up and down on the whale's tongue and swimming in his belly until Pawpaw arrived at church." "I think you're losing your mind, Pete," said John with a bewildered look on his face. "How could you possibly slide up and down on the whale's tongue and swim in its belly?" asked John. He stood there looking at Pete, waiting for an answer, when he began to put things into perspective. "Oh, I get it," he declared. "You imagined this while your grandfather was driving to church. I think every time Mr. Jack hit a bump, you thought you were sliding up and down on the whale's tongue. That's gotta be it," proclaimed John. John remembered overhearing his father telling Mr. Jack that he needed new shocks for his car because it bounced too much. John also recalled the route that Mr. John drove to church every Sunday. There were all sizes of potholes along the way. Mr. Jack could take the shorter route on the highway, but he was afraid to do so. It all made sense, and John wanted to experience the ride. He grabbed his friend Pete by the arm and asked, "Can I join you on the ride home? I want to slide on the whale's tongue and swim in its belly. It sounds like fun." Then John whispered in Pete's ear, I can't wait to meet Jonah. I bet he is nice. The end. Thank you for listening to my story. If you'd like to purchase a copy, you can do so at www.sharvahamptoncampbell.com.